Welcome to a new conversation of the series of a possible decalogue for the institution yet to come. The aim, as stated in previous conversations, is to imagine the potentiality of the institution from different perspectives in a moment in which it seems that structures need to be questioned and rethought more than ever. I want to thank Lucía Casani and the La Casa Encendida for organizing this together with the colleagues from La Casa Encendida, Mónica, Maria, Carol and Carlos, because in these very unsettling circumstances and moments where we have to improvise all the time our ways of programming and communication, they've helped a lot to make these conversations possible, which is very key in the moment to come. So by borrowing José Esteban Muñoz's concept of queerness, we do want to look into the past to project into the future new ways of escaping what it has been shaped as the normal and as the normative. In the frenzy of acceleration and accumulative practices of our society, the art field has also been subsumed. Public and private funding strategies are oftentimes conditioned by audience diversification and outreach parameters that push institutions to be programming events incessantly. However, the art institution is far from solely being a space for programming. It is a key agent in the debates given in the public sphere, and as such works as a platform for contesting official narratives, for offering artists the conditions to work, for the community to gather, and for keeping us alert, amongst other things. Art institutions have long contributed to the public debate precisely by approaching experimental ways of programming, sustained many times by research methodologies. Today, we will address the role of the institution as a space for research, where the embodiment of time takes a different dimension to the one of programming, which arises certain questions and problematics. Today, I would like to welcome Elvira Dyangani and Mélanie Bouteloup to share their thoughts, questions, and strategies for that institution yet to come. They have both conceived ways of approaching their practices from perspectives giving a special space to research strategies. Since 2018, Elvira is director of the Showroom in London, a space that, despite being in the center of the city, operates from the periphery by gathering artists, local communities, and experimental practices of art making in a very broad sense. They commission and produce arts and discourse, providing an engaging collaborative program that challenges what art can be and do for a wide range of audiences, including art professionals and the local community. Elvira is affiliated to the Department of Visual Cultures of Goldsmiths and the Thoughts Council of Fondazione Prada. Previously, she served as Creative Times Senior Curator of the 8th edition of the Göteborg International Biennial for Contemporary Arts, and Curator International Arts at Tate Modern. She recently joined Tate Modern Advisory Council, so thank you, Elvira, for joining us. And Mélanie, she is today an independent curator. She was formerly co-founder and held the position of director of Beton Salon, Center for Art and Research in Paris, and Villa Basilev from 2003 to 2020. Beton Salon bears at the core of its own name the concept of research as a tool to offer a space of collective reflection that combines both artistic and academic practices and questions the production and dissemination of knowledge. When Beton Salon took over Villa Basilev back in 2016, they set up a residency program for artists and researchers that would also have research at the core of the program, with the aim of reconnecting Villa Basilev with its history through a contemporary look of its heritage. Over the last 17 years, Mélanie has curated numerous projects in various forms that anchor research in society on process-based, collaborative and discursive levels, following different time spans in cooperation with various local, national, and international organizations. I would now like to hand over to Mélanie to listen to her contribution to the possible decalogue of the institution to come. Then we will hand over to Elvira, and from there we will begin our conversation about the institution as a place for research. So thank you, Mélanie, also for accepting the invitation, and the screen is yours.
And okay, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah? Okay, perfect. So, well, thank you for inviting me. It's actually, I'm a bit moved with this invitation, because it's been a while I haven't been talking like publicly, let's say. So I'm now talking from a very special position, and I wanted to share with you, the particularity of that position, given the fact that you're asking me what could be, what should be an art institution. I mean, 17 years ago, I established an organization which became an institution, and we started from scratch, from nothing, no political will. We were a group of artists and curators, and there were only a very few spaces in Paris by that time, no curators. We wanted to help young artists and curators to get visibility, to continue experiment when they go out of school. And we worked a lot. We worked with many people, like in total, we had like about 100 people within our team who worked with us. And we did like more than 100 shows and projects and etc. So it was really hard to set up this institution, and I dedicated myself like entirely, like days and nights, like somehow militant, hoping for it to get professionalized, for it to get sufficient funding, for it to be able to continue experiment. And it was like a permanent adaptation, learning by doing. Slowly, we could work on our working conditions. We could support, train, raise money, but we were always like unstable, struggling. There were always like urgencies, pressure, a necessity to get things done, kind of impossibility to slow down, because we were full of desires. The adventure was somehow, we could see it as a miracle that this collective endeavor, could stay so long and continue. And every year it was a bit better. So we thought, okay, let's continue, let's fight. But for a long time, it was like an adventure that we could collectively build, and at one point, there were too many difficulties. At one point, just a series of things happened. I became a mother, then we lost our main sponsor, who decided to stop their support. Then I had some health problems, and people starting to accuse me of moral harassment. And so this was a big moment that I tried to face, and that we tried to face with the team. But at one point, it just became impossible to face. And my body just dropped me. And today, I'm not working anymore at Béton Salon. And I am trying to reflect, on what happened. Why this 17 years lasted so long, and what we did achieve and what we did not achieve. And there are many ideas in my head. It's a bit messy. It's not clear yet. But I thought that since we are asking what could be like an alternative to the institutions we know. And I mean, this is a question I've been asking to myself, all the time. And I have this feeling that I have tried everything, many ideas. We try to be horizontal, we try to be feminist, we try to slow down, we try to be collective, we try to raise money, mixing private, public. We try to care, But at one point, when the basis of what you are trying to achieve is weak, and there is something like if it was a body with a part missing somehow, that it cannot walk, or you are walking, but at one point your body is just tired and exhausted, and then and I think this is kind of somehow what happened. And of course I'm like asking myself, how could it has it been different, and every time I ask this, I realize that I really permanently tried to adapt to what we were encountering, and to the problems, and to the joys, and to successes, to failures. I mean, every time we were like trying to see the next step and how we could make things different. But it's true that the more you question yourself, and the more work you also have, because you need to then find flexibility, adapt your organigram or your sources of money, your budget, you need to adapt to what artists want. I mean, and at one point, this flexibility becomes like a kind of impossibility to be stable also. Kind of paradoxically, and today I kind of feel that there are like on one side a kind of tendency for organizations to get more professionalized, more into management, more accompanying artists, all these concepts, in the curatorial, that you want to apply because they are nice concepts, and so you want to work on these ideas. But the more you work on these ideas, the more complex your work also becomes. And also, when you have all these agendas, to fulfill, at the end, you can't have the same energy everywhere. So of course you do mistakes, and somehow an institution, is asked not to do any mistake, because somehow an institution should be the warrant of some professional quality, of some care, of some stability, and if you don't comply with this, then that there is something not working, and we should somehow denounce it. And I was trying to actually talk about it with my partners, etc., my board, the team, everybody. But of course, change takes time, and so you have a small change 1 year, then next year another one, and of course it's never enough. And you are doing a lot, and it's never enough. And on the other side, there is a tendency of less institutionalization, more militancy. You are in the street, and you want to change, and it's normal. At one point, it's just like you're angry, and you need to say it loudly, and so you want revolution, you want a radical change. And I understand this will, and there is a lot of young people who today don't believe anymore in institutions. They just believe going into the street and, talking about conditions of work, how places are funded, the problems with private, and all this, these things that are not working in the art world, but not only in the art world, in society in general. I mean, now we're talking about art, but of course there is a very big crisis that is much more general. And so there are these two tendencies. And if you want to be in between, which this I think I tried to be, I was thinking, okay, let's not take position. Let's work with these two sides. So I can try to make them dialogue, and we can then provoke a change by having these two sides, involved in talking and in working together. But this is also very hard, because then you have conflicts. You have to make opposites together working, and well, it's of course very difficult, and you lose a lot of energy, and you are never doing enough radical, or you are never enough professional, and all these things. And I entered into this kind of impossibility. And today I'm like really asking, okay, then what? If we have to imagine the future, and I come with that word, and I hope it can help, because I was really struggling with the question. I thought of companionship. I was like, okay, maybe one possibility would be to look at what is existing already and see how you can use the small stability that an institution can have, and be a companion of it, so you can find a place within that institution to be radical. But, not to be radical in all the institution, because it's impossible. And it would be naive to think that you can, and utopian to say that you can be out of the institution, because then you don't have money. So, without money, you can't do things. We need to get paid. We need, and of course, so then maybe by finding a small place within a bigger context, it could be in education as well, a post-diploma, or a residency place, which would be a companion to a museum, this kind of things, that maybe you can create like something which would be, I would say, ephemeral. So no stability, because then you say, I start this day and I will end that day. So you have the funding for it, so you don't have to look for it afterwards, because this takes too much time. And then you can really set up the conditions, that you think are fair enough for everybody to be happy and work smoothly, and so you can really do the job in a way you feel good. But it's also important that you accept, and this is my last point, that everything can't be perfect. It's okay not to be a hero. It's okay not to be professional. It's okay not to have the best concepts and talk right English and all these things. I remember one thing Okui and Vezor told me, and I thought I will quote him, because I'm always thinking of this sentence, which is a very simple one. Okui once told me, Mélanie, it's not important to talk good English. We all talk bad English, and it's okay. and I'm just thinking this, we are all doing what we can, and it's not perfect, but as long as we can do it and we believe in it, let's work on it, and don't criticize each other, and let's be benevolent and all these things, because it's so easy that critique arrives, and then you feel ashamed, and then you feel pressure, and then you just can't breathe, and it's enough hard like this, and of course it's important to find the time is important to reflect and to self-criticize, but then it's also important not to do it too much, because then at what point you are only reflective on what you're doing, and you are talking to yourself, and you don't really work for what originally you wanted to, which is like society, art, and etc. So more or less, I think I will stop here for the introduction. It's already a lot.
Thank you, Mélanie, for your generosity, sharing your experience, which is not easy always. And I think that many of the things you said resonate in many of us, at least in me. And in one conversation we had before this conversation privately, we were also talking about the violence we live around this acceleration of precisely what you were saying. We need to achieve so many things, and we get obsessed, and we are pushed, and we are. So thanks for that, and I will give Elvira welcome, and I think she might bring us one of the answers. And I think one of the key points is time, which we will go back to in the conversation. And I'm sure it has to do with how Elvira is gonna give us some light, maybe, or not. Let's see. Elvira?
That's putting a lot of pressure on me, but thank you so much for the invitation, Anne, for this opportunity to connect again with Mélanie, which has been a long while. And I didn't know that you were no longer in the salon, which made me really sad. also because of what you just explained. But also thank you to La Casa for not only inviting us, but also to consider what is the institution yet to come. No? I feel like I can feel like Lucia sort of like trying to grapple the sense of what she wants the institutions to become, no? Particularly when you have seen an institution from within and you wanted to transform it. It's interesting. There are many things, like you have said, that of course resonate with what I want to try to invoke here as sort of like care, politics of care, ethical care as one of the key elements of that institution, of the decalogue, or the manifesto that we should endure in order to engage with institutions, right? In a way, Mélanie, for all the things that you said, because for 17 years you give your heart, your soul, everything you are and what you have achieved for one institution, and it loads you, it loads you, that part of you that you have so much committed to it. And it feels like it is important also to acknowledge what you said, because it is about the emotional labor that one puts into the circulation of ideas and concepts, right? And how much we are struggling not only to put that into place, but to put it in a system in which taking time to reflect is something that is still now, where we're supposed to have the time to reflect, we are not invited to. We, in fact, are invited to accelerate, to overdo, to create content, right, for a reality that is not even in an audience that is not even capable to consume it. This is what happened, right? Like we do programs for 2 days. Like I was thinking in some of the programming we want to watch this weekend, and then you are like, how can I engage with this, which is about care, at a time that I had to take care of my family, my son, what everybody needs, 3 hours. I mean, of course, some of these things are recorded, but some others are live, and we don't have time to consume it. Also, it comes to me that there is an absolute need to slow down. One of the things that, I don't know who is the person that follows you, but one of the things that you make me think, Mélanie, is also how different positions we are, because I came to inherit an organization that have already an incredible high esteem among colleagues and artists and people in the neighborhood, which for me is very important. I'm now foreign to it in a way, because I live in Southeast London and the showroom is in the Northwest. I haven't been able to go back since March 15 because I had to shield. I care. I take care of my mom, who is somebody that is in the 70s and have pre-cisamente medical conditions. So this is a reality that I will have to engage with when I then open to the world, or as it's happening these weeks when things seems to be relaxing. No? But I was saying that because it has to do about there is something we were saying in relation to all this sort of what we see in the world around inequality and around the institutional power that you also mentioned. No? Like people is tired of the institution or the institutional standards, or let's say the factual power, the political power that dominate a specific environment, right? And cities are let's say in a way and in many respects, somehow, even if we don't want it, they get transformed every time that, let's say, a political cycle change, right? And what we see also when people demonstrate against certain elements in the city is people taking appropriation of the ownership of a city that should be free of those narratives and should allow at least multiple narratives to live with, no? I feel like one of the key things, and this is what I bring to the decalogue of the institution yet to come, is to reflect on care, cuidado, right? Caring for the others, obviously, but always for oneself as well. Not to have the sense. I mean, I could also suggest, and I was thinking now, difference, right? Like also difference, the idea of difference and not diversity. I want to make a specific distinction there when maybe we can talk when we talk about research as well, no? But care, because our institutions are about that. Betos Salon, in my experience in Betos Salon, it was a space of caring for the artists, caring for the audience, caring for the research, caring for the time. and caring is hopefully for the people that was involved there. But what you tell us with the story, Mélanie, is that there is a point where care was dropped to engage with the need of fulfill somebody else's need. And I don't know, like, I mean, you explain us now what had happened to you, but I feel like the circumstances surrounding that are cautionary tales that other institutions, other organizations, other collective has gone through. Why is that? Why we are not caring as much? Why we should care more? Who is not caring, really, right? And I feel like there is a moment where, with all this neoliberal tendency that now we're seeing are affecting everything we're doing, our education, the education that our children will have, the politics, the political economy we live in, and the context, right, that define the economies that we operate within, no? The showroom, but also and many other institutions, right? And I feel that there is a point where we need to take somebody accountable. I don't know, like in a way, there was a moment in a conversation we had the other day where somebody said, you know, with all that is happening, one has to, sometimes it's not only what we claim in the street, it's also that people had to make the groundwork to change, right? Institutions also had to change. And there has to be an incredible work, he will say, like, we had to do an incredible exercise of soul searching, right? We had to go back to who we are and try to analyze. And I'm talking who we are in terms of the institutional we, and try to figure out not only just to make a sort of like a reflection of what happened in the past, and sort of like, I think going to the past is important. It's fundamental to go into the roots. It's fundamental understanding that many things that affect caring in political terms are systemic, right? But at the same time, we had to look at the present, what is going on, because what happens sometimes is that people go extremely at the back and they stay there, you know, that we replace one statue for another, and things seems to have changed. There is a lot of changes in surface, right? Programming is one of the most, I would say, one of the tools that have been used as a double standard. I program certain things, I check certain boxes, I don't have to worry about it. What about the structures within those institutions that need to be changed? Care in that respect, for me, has to be about that as well. It has to be about changing the institution. So when my friend Ben was saying, we need to do this work, this exercise of soul searching, I was thinking, well, and I say it aloud, I feel like, well, we are saying then that institution has soul. We should presume that, but we know that's not right. So what happened in sort of like in smaller organization where, you know, like carry on incredible themes, we challenge ourselves with incredible and innovative experimental way of addressing, you know, community-led projects, educational-led projects, et cetera, no, research projects, is that the people in the front, like, we are really putting our souls, our bodies, our minds to work for that. And sometimes we, unfortunately, as you say, our bodies drop us because we care so much about everything else we forgot. That we are also somebody that is putting themselves out there. And I think the main issue is what happened in these other places where the soul is something too abstract to even take care about, is that they just need to take the models that some of the other organization produce, transforming into a temporary program, and go ahead with it, right? But in the smaller places where putting those things, and this will be seen as radical, and this will be seen as political. But institutions like ours, where things are really depending, like if you lose the person that is in touch with the community, you lose the community, or at least part of it. That you had to care for that to be part of the whole, for all of us to embrace it as a whole, right? Like the showroom has this program, Communal Knowledge, which has been incredibly successful in transforming the relationship that an art organization or an art institution has with the community that surrounds them. Because in one way, it's because it's hyper-localism, but in other, it's because that hyper-locality allows you to know your partners, and knowing that if you bring somebody outside from that context, is going to be reading sort of like, it's going to be working exactly in the same and trust way. Caring is also about that. Caring is also about building that over years. What my colleagues, Emily Pettit and Louise Shelley did was caring about the Charles Street area, right? And what I receive as the director of this organization is about also how make possible the caring. Again, all these things, like what do you do when you have this in your hands, right? How then you combine what has been done well with some of the failures that we have produced along the way. This is again what I think like happens to me, what happens to Lucia or to Anne when they conceive the institution yet to come. And I remember something that somebody that was also part of the programming in the showroom before my time, and I worked with in 2005 when I was a curator in Centro Atlántico de Arte Moderno in Las Palmas, Ricardo Bashbaum, said to me, and I remember that project very well because it was a moment where I decided that I won't be the kind of curator that remains outside, like the anthropology is looking, out to see how to tell the story of the other, right? I wanted to be that person that is capable to bring together both the interpretation of an artwork, but also the capacity of living with it as it was an spectator. So caring for me is also being part of this sort of like the relationship established between the object of cares, the producer of the object of cares, the addressee of the object of care, but also the relationship that is established between the three elements, right? My role is almost like to disappear. I sometimes compare it with my experience as a basketball referee, in which the way that I see it, and I think, I don't know if you can say for any sport, but you can say for basketball, and the way that I was trained is that you are an interpreter, but you're also a player. You are the player that better knows the rules, but you are not over anybody else, right? So there is something about reading and playing the game in the way that you made the best possible game to happen. That is somehow also part of that caring that I want to take. And I know this is a very simple explanation, but the people out there that is listening to this, that understand basketball will understand this. What I want to say is that my interest here is sustain the organization, but also caring for the team that is there, for us as a team, for the community that is there. Trying to do, like with the first things that I did when I invited people to the showroom, the first thing that I did when I joined the showroom, is invite all the organizations that have worked for a decade with the space and ask them what did they want it. Because I realized that I was the one that I was new. They were the ones that had to welcome me into the embodiment, right? And I had to be loyal to that relationship that they had established with the institution. And as they asked me at the time, I needed, and I still trying to do so, to create ways in which they could engage with us a longer term. And then the second part was to consider that, yes, we are there and we are the institution, as Mélanie was saying, but there's also another aspect that the institution can also play, which is to be in that invisible platform for people to connect without the necessary structure of the institution to be the one leading that relationship. And if that happened during my time at the showroom, I'll be super satisfied. And I think I'll leave it here, and then we can talk about other things. Sorry that I also started the monologue.
Thank you, Elvira. Very inspiring as well. And I think that care specifically right now, it's been a few years now that we are talking about care, but now it's coming like a stronger because of all the collective situation we are living right now. And it's something we all are looking towards, but it has a flip side to it as well, which is care is not always, satisfying. It has a lot of tiring work behind it, no? The repetition.
Labor, yeah.
Yeah, so we need that idea of a collective shared care in a way, no? Not to really end up as tired as we are in many senses. But I think for me, it's one of the keys right now. And not only, as you said, not only in the art institution, but it's like from the center towards our direct access right now. No? So thanks to both of you, because I think we've seen ways of thinking and operating and where you want to situate or where you situate yourselves. And I'm now interested in thinking about how you have managed or worked in the institutions or through your projects, having research as on the very basis, because we can think of projects and everything has everything is research based. But one thing is to have an exhibition and to do a research for your exhibition, and another different thing is to be interested in doing our research no matter what the outcomes are, no? And the showroom has operated like that for years, and Beton Salon also, and Beton Salon maybe has a much more structured structure, but it's connection with university, no? I want to make a few points or a few questions regarding this. How, because we've already said that time, it's one of the constraints, and one of the constraints because art institutions are supposed to be producing to give access to culture, to give platforms for production, but it's not sustainable. We've seen that. And there's another sort of aims that the institution has, and one of them is research, right? Research as a way to be part of the wider debates that it's in society. So what sort of institution do we need now that will first contribute to our understanding of what is happening around us? And secondly, will this contribute to much needed social change that seems to be so essential right now? How is that? I know they are like two big questions, and maybe we've been tackling them, but I want to underline the importance of the role of the institution as a place for research in that sense, and how it is not completely jointed time-wise with the publicness of events, right? There's like a backstage. So I think that in moments like now, where so many things are happening, we have so much information, we have to still stress the importance of the art institutions to have those spaces. How do you think you contribute as art institutions or art practitioners or arts curators? What's the importance of research in that sense? Mélanie, do you?
Yeah, I mean, we've been reflecting a lot on that question with Beton Salon and Villa Vassiliev being somehow the backstage, you know, of Beton Salon main exhibition space. So we had this idea that we would have on one side, you know, the exhibitions, the activity for the audience and workshops and the connection with the university, but more with the students, so that we would be open, you know, to a new audience that is not used to go to see contemporary art. And we were also working with high schools, etc. And on the other side, we had that research part, which was taking the form of the residencies, with the Pernod Ricard Fellowship, in which, you know, we were inviting an artist to come with a kind of initial idea, but it was not important that we would follow it. And for the very first meeting, we were telling them, okay, we would like to take this time to just lose some time and let's see what happens. There is no obligation of any result. The plan is more like to talk and see what do you need? And then the question was, okay, I thought of this. What do you think? Maybe we could do a meeting. And so spontaneous meetings, and at the end, very often the artist was really happy to tell us that he would have never thought, of doing such a thing, because he never had time really maybe to engage in sculpture, or I don't know, or in looking at this archive in a museum, and somehow this is what we really liked, with that activity, is that it was totally process based. It was very much like kind of exploration, of different possibilities, and some were working, others not. Failure was actually a nice idea, because we could fail, and it was okay, not to find the proper form for an idea, because we knew that it could come later on. And so it was really working well and very satisfying for everybody involved in it. But it's true that over time, we could see the limits also, of course. And there was a kind of will to invite the artist again after a few years, to develop like a public project out of what they've been working on for the last years. And of course, it was very frustrating, because you had a very nice relation with one artist, and so you developed like a research project, and then you want to go to the next step, because at one point an idea can become something you want to really test, in the real world, and of course it was just impossible for us to be able to answer to all these desires, because our program was still running, and we could not add another layer, with like exhibitions coming from the fellows, like from the years before, and at one point, it also creates like frustrations, and my question is like, I'm also reflecting on what you just said, Elvira, because I've always asked myself, okay, what would be the limit? At one point, there is a point you realize that you are either, you don't have there is something wrong in the caring situation. Either it's you realize you are not caring yourself enough, and you are not respecting yourself, or you realize that there are frustrations that can become, that can grow over time, and there is no way to stop them. And maybe it would be better to stop the project. But when you talk about it with your team, where everybody wants to continue, because of course, you don't have the same experience. I've been there for 17 years and most of my team were like for 2 years. And it's hard to tell them, okay, I've been testing all these things. I think we need to stop because I realize we have arrived to that point where we've tried all these beautiful ideas, but it's like this is creating something not nice. I can see it, and maybe it would be better to either. I could not say to myself I will transmit it to someone, because I knew that the conditions of work were not good enough to care for the person who would take it. And so I did not want to take this responsibility, but I was also very sad not to be able to take the decision collectively. And so I was struggling with all this. And I think this is also a question with research. When you start a research, you don't know where you go, you don't know where to stop, and it can last forever. and And so this is a total paradox. So somehow, like an art institution doing a research-based program. I mean, if you have answers,
I don't know. I mean, maybe you needed to ask the question to Emily, who led the organization, to me after 10 years. But it's true that, the showroom, the characteristic of the showroom is that the showroom has been operating for 35 years. It started as a project by artists that were doing pop-up exhibitions in Covent Garden. They got the first director, David Thorpe, in the early 80s. And since then, they have been as much as a different showroom that they were before. One thing that I had tried to escape in a way is this idea of a new institutionality where a curator arrives and everything's transformed the space, no? And I wonder whether there are things that are transformative in all the phases of the showroom that one can bring together, and that my objective is not necessarily to come here and transform everything so then I leave an imprint, but to preserve what is good in the organization and then move ahead with other aspects that perhaps needs a bit of sort of like rethinking, not necessarily transforming or changing, right? Or adapting, right? Like the way to think about, like how to preserve something the way it was. In order to do that, you need to apply, some sort of like new forms of restoration. So then it reminds how it is. But then at times those restorations imply maybe treatments that you wouldn't dare to use in the past. But what you're doing is to actually keep it the way it is, but adapting, being something fluid that is capable to sort of like live in parallel to the time that it's supposed to serve, right? And for me, for instance, communal knowledge, which is a program that I started in 2010, is one of the things that attract me the most to the work that Emily and Luis were doing at the time, right? It, in a way, it takes an area of London as a case study, and it research on it each time, like every year, invite artists twice, 3 times over years, develop projects, and then develop workshops, and then develop sort of like have a public outcome that somehow reflect on those sort of like relationships, right? It creates visibility for aspects that are somehow hidden, that are considered, so to speak, infraordinary, right? That are not eventful, that are everyday. That was one of the things that attracted me the most. At the same time, understand there is an organization in through communal knowledge that was done a lot to unlearn established norms, values, code, relationships, right? That we have to what it means to produce art, but also what it means to produce a body of knowledge. And one of the things that I also am trying to do is to continue this sense of the long-term collaboration, but also trying to be attentive to forms of knowledge and epistemologies that perhaps are not considered sort of like academically sounded, or that will have no space in academia to operate, right? And can we build knowledge through poetry, right? Can we build knowledge through other sorts of rituals that are necessarily not even Western, right? Like how sort of like non-Western knowledge has a space within the organization. I want to bring that bit in because there are many non-Western or originally non-Western people coming from the community, right? So I feel like there is a way in which research, as much as you, so I think you and I have a sense of, for what I remember and what you just said, to understand institution in a much more activist dynamic, right? Like a dynamic space that somehow, as you said, is capable to bring all these things, assume failure because also failure is part of trying, but it's at the same time doesn't respond to perhaps the first etymology of the institution when it started, or how we consider it, like the bourgeois 19th century space for arts presentation. You are in a center, or you were in a center that was idea-led, that was art and content driven, right? That had that magic, and also that had, as you and your team will recognize every time that you were saying to them, it's over, that had your energy. right? And that energy, yours, and I mean, ideally will have others that somehow come after you and support you through that process, are also part of a certain knowledge that we create. And I want to spend time in this soul searching, looking for ways in which we can care for that sort of knowledge, right? That what you have produced during 17 years cannot be just the subject of somebody's dissertation. It has to be a way in which what you have done in Beto Salon can help to transform the understanding of what an institution of art and research should be, or even just art, or even a cultural institution should be in France, right? I think that's what we sort of are trying to aim about. No? Like, I think it's important for us to understand that there is something other than just what we're doing. And it's not that when you wake up every morning, you are like, I'm going to change the world I'm doing here is going to be transformative and da-da-da. It's not about that. You're doing your little thing, that what you think is right, what you think was best, what you think it was the next thing, what you think there was the next challenge when you felt that there was no challenge to engage with. But you want to do that. And in a way, if you transform something about it, like somebody that you touch in your team that is going to go, I don't know, and work in one of these big Parisian institutions, maybe something will change. I'm not somebody that loves grand gestures. I think if I love Beto Salon or love the showroom, it's because it's actually made of that. It's like Casa Encendida is actually another example of that, right? Are institutions that are not necessarily big in great gestures. It's about sustaining the everyday. It's about putting the sort of like the spotlight in things that happen to us that are transformative in the way that many historical events are. It's about, instead of having like when people is asking, what should we put in place of a status? At time I think, well, maybe you can give it to somebody local, blah, blah. But at time I also think, like, what if you leave it empty? How can we build from absences, right? Maybe the institution yet to come is an institution where uncertainty has a role to play. Because we don't know everything, we cannot report about everything. Because we don't know everything, we cannot address it as we know. We have been surrounded by institutions where, certainty and completeness is the only way forward. And everybody that didn't have that sense of like a complete collection was trying to fulfill it. What if we don't try that? Right? What if we just simply address, like, that's what research, yes, research, but what that implies. Is that research in the sense that academia think about research? Then I don't want it. I want one that is in conversation. I want that is in relation with peers, but also members of the public, artists, right? That's the kind of project that I want to endure. And things that perhaps doesn't necessarily fit within the Department of Visual Arts, even though in the Department of Visual Art of Goldsmiths, a lot of things are capable to be sustained. But there are moments where I think we have the opportunity with exhibition making to bring together other forms of knowledge, other forms of epistemology, in a way that complement the work that education or higher education platforms do. And that's it. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. Maybe so much time on my own.
No, I think these conversations need to take place, and that's why we are like needing to share and really have a small catharsis in a small scale of sharing, because we don't see things clear, and that uncertainty help us know it's uncertainty for everyone. No? But I think that, when I think of research myself in institutions, in art institutions, it is thought from the praxis as well. It's not like a theoretical, as you said, related to academia, although Beton Salon at the beginning also had like that bridge with university, right? That somehow opened up that it made it more flexible, the research part from university into the arts now. And that's the thing that I think we can bring into research from the art institutions. On top of everything you have mentioned, and we are also discussing around community. We did it already, and how the institution has to open up, or how does it open up to different constituencies or artists. So I think these multi-roles, obviously it's not accurate to just fixing one of them because it's intersectional. The institution is intersectional in that sense.
And in that sense, research should be intersectional as well.
Yeah.
I feel like, as you said, no, like there has to be a moment where praxis also connect there. No, like also, I mean, there is a, I don't know how to say, but there is part of, I mean, I feel like one of the things that we need to give ourselves, which is not always the right thing, and I guess I'm using this time of the confinement and the restrictions to do it, to put it in practice as part of also our politics of care, is reflection, right? Like time to reflect. I had the feeling that, you know, like for what you were saying, Mélanie, that you have been like going from one thing to the other, with a lot of time, of course, to reflect within the context of a specific project, but somehow like only now that you are outside of it, being capable to see how much impact and how much that have affected your life. Having the time to reflect, consider what is relevant, right? Like when we study, when we are asked as a students of a doctoral studies to decide on a dissertation, right? Dissertation topic, at least in my time, like 10 years ago. You needed to find a spot where you could be relevant, right? And if it wasn't relevant, they wouldn't allow you to continue to the research. I think we need to do that with the organizations and institutions. Are you relevant? Yes. Okay, you can continue. Are you not relevant? Okay, maybe we should use this space for something else, use the resources for something else. Then what makes something relevant is another
That's the other question. Who decides what's relevant? Because I think we have to wrap up. But we have 5 more minutes, I think. But I think this is linked to what I was wanting to comment on time. For any of the practices you have mentioned, time is essential. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, at least here in the UK and in other countries as well, where the funding organisms have very specific criteria that match up with numbers of people, numbers of activities, numbers again. And this is something that we live in all societies. And it's true that here in the UK, at least, it's very, very regulated, right? How do we make it essential in that sense, or relevant? How to have a different time of the institution to nurture, and to another word maybe that I'm using or I'm borrowing from nature is soil, no? To let things be nurtured and grow. So for me, that's the other thing, no? As to wrap up, and I know it's another big, huge question, but I want to hear a little bit your reflections on that, and we'll say goodbye after that.
You know what? I really like this idea, because this is actually what I'm thinking of right now. Right now, I'm like thinking, I mean, I had this word meta in my mind. I mean, I realized that when I was working, and at the end also, when all these questions like became really like violent, I realized that I was somehow alone, and that there was no organization with who I could connect, you know, to discuss this infrastructure and more like soil issues. And now I'm like thinking that this is also why I brought up that idea of companionship. But I'm trying to imagine a kind of new form or institution, you know, which would be like an organization that would be at the service of other organizations, so that when they would be continually prospecting on ideas with no deadlines, and somehow when one institution needs them to find a time for time, then they would be able to connect and work together. But I don't know if this is, you know, realistic and feasible and all that, but I feel there is a need for like a more ground activity instead of polarization that we see today, also with the social media. You need to choose if you are this or if you are that, and there is not much place for nuanced reflections and debates. So maybe we need an institution for that. But this institution will not do exhibitions, no residencies, actually no activity apart from research. And so it looks like a dream when I'm describing it now. But
let's talk later.
Yet another institution. Okay.
But I feel like, like I used to talk about ritual as institution. This comes from the place where I always say I will not do a parallel history as I will not do a parallel museum. If you talk about the Museum of Slavery and you have the British Museum, this is wrong. You should have the British Museum talking about slavery. You know what I mean? It's like there are certain aspects that one has to, like, you can help to describe aspect in the history, but the history, somehow you had to shake it to sort of like, you had to put it into question. If you start doing parallel things, you had to, I don't know, crossroads. I don't even know what I was saying, actually. What was your question?
No, but somehow what you're saying, the historization, like, so knowing from where you are talking and from which history you are talking is research also, and you always need to question it, and it's important to find a way that there is this parallel activity being run besides the projects that are funded with deadlines, etc.
That's the thing. Like, you live in the. That's what I think. If you sustain the organization, right? Like, there is the core of the program, right? But then there is this other part, which is the soul, sort of like reformulation, the understanding, the constant understanding. I had made it in the showroom. I had this very visual way of addressing what for me was something very internal, which was to question what an institution could be, And we invited first to artists to use our mural, our facade as a mural to somehow bring in visually in a sort of quote unquote representational way what we were saying that the institution should become, no? And now the second was somebody that actually transformed the institution into a mailbox where we can leave, that people could leave messages, which are amazing if you had the chance to listen to them, including some sort of that are talking about these different moments that we went through, like since October last year. But then also the possibility of now is going to be to make it into an open call. So like asking people to somehow rethink that facade, but also to help us to understand what an institution should do, which is about the service you provide. No? The like, how are you with the world that surrounds you, the media world, the hyperlocal, but also the world elsewhere, no? Which for me is crucial to combine both, let's say, these parallel times, no, Anne, but also the possibility of the institution being a hub of many other different places, sort of like overlapping, which are about we all being part of the staff there, but also the people surrounding, being sort of the Charles Street neighborhood that have accompanied the showroom over 10 years, more than 10 years now, and also everybody else that we bring in and out of our program.
Yeah, that's great. It's that companionship that Mélanie was saying, taking care of each other collectively in a built community. So with that idea, I think we can call it for today. And it is a shame that we just have to switch off cameras and our conversation will go away. But we'll catch up sometime, somewhere. We'll see. But it was a pleasure to have you. And it was really nice to talk to you and share concerns, because all we have are concerns and questions at this time. So thank you very much to both of you. And once again to La Casa Encendida for organizing this. And I'll see you around.
Thank you. See you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.